Welcome to Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast, the podcast that watches back painful matches so you don't have to. This week on Heart and Hand, save us, Super Ryan. So welcome to Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast. My name's David Edgar. I'm your host as usual. Nice to be back in the chair this week. And joining me for some sober analysis of yesterday's rather pitiful Old Firm defeat are two people who are the leading lights in any temperance movement. First of all, Mr. Ian Hogg.
How are you doing, David?
And our very own tactics spod, Adam Thornton.
Hello, David. Good to have you back.
Yeah, it's good to be back, although it's kind of like that thing at a funeral, isn't it? It's like if only it'd been under happier circumstances, etc., etc. Yep, Rangers took on Celtic in the opening Old Firm match of the season at Ibrox. Fair to say there was an awful lot of optimism among the Bears. I'll hold my hand up and say I certainly felt it as well. I think we were all looking forward to going into the match on a high after Thursday night, after Alfredo Morelos' last-minute goal had nodded us into the Europa League. Good draw as well. An amazing night at Ibrox that Thursday night. And all seemed rosy in the garden until, as Mr. Hogg and I will be able to confirm because we watched the game together yesterday in the enclosure, we saw the team lines around about 11 o'clock. And I think it's fair to say, judging by the reaction of the people that we were talking to, the people around us, my phone, your phone, social media, it caught people by surprise.
Yeah, it did. I was at my parents' yesterday morning, David, for a wee pre-match coffee, and the team line came through, and my daughter handed me her phone and went, "There's a team, Dad." And immediately, do you know one of those times you think, well, that's a prank? Because that can't possibly be the team. Where's the wingers and why is Alfredo Morelos on the bench? We've played well in spells. I'm not going to say all the time, but we've played well in spells, playing with width, playing with pace, playing a real high pressing game. And when we don't play that high pressing game, we get days like St Mirren, or we get days like Kilmarnock, where, we kind of get ourselves out of jail. But against the likes of Legia, certainly in the second half, we're really, really pressing high up the park. I expected that just to continue, especially with all the narrative and the rhetoric around Celtic's defence not being the greatest, and all mainly debutants, with the exception, I think, of Nir Bitton, who went off injured.
And isn't a centre-half.
And isn't a centre-half, clearly. But we set up with this wacky, I think, Adam, you might disagree, but we set up with this wacky set of tactics around, or at least we lapsed into this style of playing, whereby we had almost a Christmas tree type formation. Celtic, instead of us, pressed really high up the park. And at times, especially in the first 20, David, we struggled to get out. And we kept on, we resorted to lumping the ball high to our smallest striker. If that was going to be a potential outcome, play Morelos. One thing he can do is fight and hold the ball up. I found it odd. I get that, players are going to need a rest. I get, we were hoping for the empty the tank type routine, given a lot of the forwards won't be away on international duty. But it baffled me that, say, guys like Arfield were in when Arfield's looked knackered for weeks, but Alfredo Morelos stayed on the bench. And it seriously baffled me, the absence of either Jones or Ojo.
Adam, as Hoggy said, it looked like a narrow midfield. You could call it a 4-3-3. I think it did look as though it was more likely to be that sort of Christmas tree formation. However, having watched the game back, and obviously watched it live yesterday, you could have chucked a net on our midfield a lot, and the movement was appalling. We will come to the goal, Connor Goldson's error, of course, but I'm going to have a little bit of sympathy for him here, because the midfielders were, I thought, dreadful in terms of offering options yesterday. it completely broke down. And if you watch back, I know you will, segments of play, and you look at where various players are, it's ludicrous. There's no shape. Even in the defence lost its shape, where you would have Katic and Goldson on the same flank but 20 yards apart, which should never happen. And generally speaking, there was nobody to hit. There was no pass on. Celtic did press, but I don't think Rangers' front four, maybe excuse Defoe because he's supposed to lead the line and occupy the centre backs, but I don't think that the attacking midfielders Rangers picked offered anywhere near enough in terms of movement or options for the people behind them to find them, which of course leads to this thing that we've spoken about before, where Jack and Davis end up going further and further and further back. And added into that Glenn Kamara had a dreadful 45 minutes.
Yeah, there's quite a lot to unpack there. But I think for me, first of all, looking at the team when it was announced, it definitely did take me by surprise. I think I had tweeted, kind of just thinking out loud the day before, I wonder if we might use Aribo and Arfield as those attacking mids. I never seriously thought it would happen. I could see the thinking. I think I'm probably in the minority. I'd never have done it in this game. I completely agree with that. I could see the thinking. Celtic were going to go kind of 4-4-1-1, 4-4-2. So you want to put five of them in there to absolutely swamp them. But as soon as the game starts, like Hoggy said, it was just absolutely lacklustre. I wonder whether the only thing I can think of is Morelos has not picked up an injury, but has maybe been showing signs of fatigue or whatever. And Gerrard has picked Defoe and then kind of worked back the way and tried to fit a team around that. If you're picking Defoe, you're not necessarily going to want Jones and Ojo playing on either side to whip balls into him. You kind of want to replicate that success that we had at the tail end of last year with two ball players, if you like, closer to him to try and link up to him. So I don't know if that's what's happened, but I mean, it didn't work. And I know we're not ones for giving praise, but Celtic for me did what they had to do very well. It was a wee bit of a role reversal from our home games last season. They got in our faces, didn't let us play. We didn't cope very well with it at all. They cut off the supply channels to Tav very well on that right-hand side. So that means we've got McGregor firing balls at him at head height, or more importantly, they just let us play with Katic and Flanagan down one side, who are both right-footed players playing on the left-hand side. They're not mega comfortable on the ball anyway. Having to play on their weaker side just makes it worse, and you could see the pressing triggers from Celtic, whereas they were happy to let them have the ball. As soon as we got it into Kamara or we managed to find a Rebo, they were on them in swarms, quite happy, really just to leave them in possession. And then when it gets forward, like you said, David, it's just so frantic. We're so poor on the ball. Aribo looked horrific for that first half. He looked like a wee boy lost. And Jack, Kamara and Davis, you're right. That three works fine when we're pressing, when the two in front of them are working very well, but more often than not, that three playing behind the ball just doesn't work. It's just so passive and so defensive. I've seen this said a few times, it was like an away game. It was like the game last year, the corresponding fixture, where we sat in for that first half, and the manager said himself he wanted to, I think, use the word suffocate play in the first half and then come out and hit them after the game. You guys have been to more Old Firm games than me. That never works. You need to come out the traps. Especially at home. Yeah, it never works. I can't fathom. I get the formation at the start. I can understand the logic of what he was doing, but the approach in terms of the passive pressing, not finding your man, not moving in, I just can't figure out what happened.
Now, Adam and I have had a private disagreement, folks, that we're about to take public, and that is that a fair point was raised by people that it was the same lineup that beat Celtic 2-0 in May, with the exception of Aribo for Kent. And therefore, the manager might have thought that they would be able to do a little bit better. My argument is against that because, Adam, and I'll just explain to you why you're wrong, that you cannot do that because the circumstances of each game are entirely unique. Firstly, in that game, Celtic had pretty much won the league. It was all done and dusted. There was no pressure on. Rangers went into this match as favourites with something to prove, and that's a different type of pressure. Secondly, it was a completely different Celtic defence. They're in a completely different set of circumstances. Their confidence wasn't as high as it could have been in terms of they've had a lot of criticism. And I felt that the team that day, that one major difference in having Kent rather than Aribo is that's pace. So you do have an outball, whereas yesterday there was none of that. Celtic could push right up on us, knowing that we could not hit them on a very fast counter, because the only one in the team with any real pace was Tav, and he would be starting from so deep. So I felt that if the manager had thought along those lines of we did that, then I think he picked a team for a game in May and not for one on the 1st of September.
Yeah, no, that's completely valid, and I should absolutely caveat that yesterday's discussion / agreement was following 10 pints for me. But yeah, no, I completely agree. But I think that's what it comes down to. Those 10 players specifically, I don't think playing Jones and moving him a little bit wider, or even having Kent there a little bit wider, I don't think that would have been enough to uptick those 10 players' performances. I guess my point on that is my point on that is they all played terribly.
Yeah, I don't even think, you can have any tactics you want, can't
exactly.
you? If you've got 10 guys or 9 guys, because I think Flanagan did fine. If you've got 9 guys who are nowhere near what we know they're capable of, then you could have Arrigo Sacchi sitting there giving it the tactics. It's not going to work.
The tactic doesn't make Davis kick the ball at the park. It doesn't make Tav have a stinker again. It's just combined with player performances and Celtic kind of nullifying our strengths, I think, just caused it, yeah.
That said, though, Hoggy, while I do accept that, what Adam said, you need to look at the players at the end of the day. They were the ones who didn't perform. I do think that there are maybe, if you like, intangibles that were at play yesterday. And for me, they do sit on the manager now. Regular listeners will know that I am basically just a Steven Gerrard groupie. But that doesn't mean that I will avoid giving him criticism that I think is valid and deserved. And I think he is due criticism for yesterday because I do think it's valid. I think that he overthought it. I think that he has this naturally conservative streak that we see in things like 2 holding midfielders regardless of opposition, that we see in things like the late not wanting to make substitutions in case it upsets the flow of the team. And I think that was at play yesterday. As Adam said, he mentioned that he wanted to basically suffocate the game and then try and hit in the second half. That's an away tactic. It didn't. It was never going to work in an Old Firm match. And I think that coming in as high as everyone was, and I include the fans in this, that even if he'd played Jones and Morelos yesterday, it might not have worked. I get that because the rest of them didn't play well. But to me, that team sent out a message saying, we're actually a little bit fearful today. We're more interested in containing and stopping them playing than we are in just going out and having a go. And that was reflected yesterday very early by huge amounts of frustration in the stands. I mean, where we were, and from talking to other Bears that were at the game, it was happening in their sector as well. People were saying, why are we doing this? Why are we playing like this? Why aren't we having a go? This is our stadium. And I do think sometimes you should be aware of the psychology of a fixture, which, of course, Steven Gerrard has forgotten more about football in the last 2 minutes than I'll ever know. But I do think he misread that.
I said to you yesterday, and I'll say it on the pod, with the potential to be lynched at some point, David, I felt yesterday was Steven Gerrard's Neil Lennon 3 at the back from May moment, in so much as he's on the face of it, it looks as if he has just completely overthought it. It's all about containment. It's all about the focus on Celtic as opposed to the focus on us and our strengths and all the good stuff that we've done. Legia Warsaw, for example, that second half, we were good, but we were good at our game, because we know what we're good at, and therefore, we took the game to Legia Warsaw. I've got no problem if you're trying to contain a game against a side whose tails are up and who are going to go after you. How many times did Walter Smith do it at Parkhead and come away with a result? But we were at Ibrox yesterday. It's our tails that have been up, and therefore my belief is we should have been going and trying to play our game and trying to win our game. The picking a side effectively to try and contain Celtic does send out the message of, I'm not entirely sure I trust us to do what we think we're capable of. And therefore we seem to have spent the first 10 minutes, David, being reintroduced to the players being reintroduced to each other on the park. Joe Aribo looked as if he hadn't seen a football before for about the first 20 minutes. He was getting brushed off the ball. Poor Gary, our own quizmaster, poor wee Gary Morris, could probably have shoved him off the ball yesterday in the first 20 minutes. And Gary's about 5'1", and I know that's rich coming for me. but it really was left field. It felt so left field, but so utterly unnecessary. Because when you coupled that with, Adam, as you said, 8 or 9 players having not a good game or a downright stinker, and Celtic's tails are up quickly, and they sensed it really quickly, and they got after us really quickly. There was patches of that first half where I was saying to David, if we get to 0-0, if we get 0-0 at half time, we've won a watch. Well, shit, it's 1-0. David said to me, if we get in 1-0, we've won a watch.
Yeah.
And that's how poor we were.
Yeah, but there was just no sense of anything connecting or any fluidity at all, because there wasn't any, as I say, having watched it back without the emotion, and it was like that. It was a very, very fragmented, very fractured display by Rangers. We couldn't get anything going, and Celtic were good at what they wanted to do, but let's not kid ourselves. I've seen a few people try to suggest this, but let's not kid ourselves that Celtic were exceptional or played wonderfully. They didn't. They all did their jobs. They all won their battles. But that, I think, was in large part due to how poorly some of our players played. Aribo's come in for a lot of criticism, Adam, and I think a lot of it was to do with a couple of less than full-blooded challenges he put in the first half. I would tend to maybe cut him some slack here, because he's certainly not the first player from either side who's gone into an Old Firm match and just thought, what the fuck is going on here?
And he absolutely looked like that, didn't he? He looked like a little boy lost. Unfortunately, I think not helped by how passive everyone else is, but Brown just sat on him pretty much for that entire first half, and just nibbled away at him and took the ball off him, and he couldn't get going at all. And you're right, the atmosphere can sometimes have an effect. The number of games that he's played, I don't know off the top of my head, has he played 11 out of 12 games or 11 out of 13 games?
He's played a lot, and a lot more than he would be used to, at a higher tempo than he's been used to in his time. And like a few of the players, and we'll come to a couple of others, he looked a bit frazzled yesterday.
Yeah, and I think I don't think that role suited him either. Now that you look at it, I don't think he's a kind of transitional player. He's one of those players that you want to start from deep and have running onto the ball, whereas he was getting it with his back to goal. And while he does have really good feet and he can slip balls in, all he's got on the outside of him is Glenn Kamara yesterday, or Flanagan trying to get up. It kind of puts him on a bit of a hiding to nothing, to be honest, when he's not got that support, they weren't even getting all the pitch anyway, but if they did, they're not the most renowned attacking threats that we've got in the team. So I felt for him a little bit. He didn't have a good game at all.
Hoggy, certain other players I thought looked shattered. Scott Arfield, I was not surprised to see him in the side, because I think that the manager has a rump of players that he will pick really come hell or high water in big matches. He'll just always default to them, and Arfield is one of them. But he was non-existent against Legia. He wasn't very good last week either. And I think it's easy for me to say, but maybe sometimes the manager needs to use the squad a little bit better, or have more trust in some of the players, because it seems to me that we've got this rump of players who will always play, and then this other group of players that we've brought in that we're hardly going to see. And that seems a little odd to me when you've got a player who's clearly struggling so badly. Scott Arfield got picked yesterday because he's Scott Arfield. He didn't get picked because of his former fitness.
Well, I think for Steven Gerrard, Scott Arfield's been a big player against Celtic. That's why he started. Scott Arfield, I think, is looking knackered, even though he had the final 2 weeks of the season off. And that's a long time ago now. Then he effectively went off with the Canadian national squad and seemed to play about 400 games for them, and ended up coming back, had maybe about 2 days in Largs, and then ends up playing European qualifiers and straight into the Scottish League campaign. So Scott Arfield, I think, is going to need a break. I'm pretty sure he's now going off for the Canadian national side. I don't want to see Scott Arfield at Ibrox for Rangers against Livingston. I'd be quite happy saying to him, away you get 5 days in the sun, just stay in Canada, do whatever. You need to recharge and be back at Ibrox for the Feyenoord game. because we need the Scott Arfield that was firing on all cylinders. Take the December game against Celtic last year. We need that Scott Arfield back, and we've hardly seen that since the start of the season, David.
And the other one, and he copped a lot of flack for a slack ball that led to Celtic's first goal. As I say, I've got a bit of sympathy for both the centre-halves yesterday, who got shouted at a lot for either aimlessly retaining the ball or just hitting it long. There was literally nothing else they could do, guys. There was no obvious pass that they were refusing quite often. And that was Connor Goldson, Adam, who, again, seems to be one of the players that Steven Gerrard trusts extremely. But questions have arisen, obviously, that Rangers have spent $3 million, a lot of money for us, on a centre-back. Niko Katic has been playing out of his skin, but it does seem, or certainly feels, that it's Connor Goldson +1.
Yeah, it does, and I'm the same as you. I know it's probably not ideal listening, but to talk through that goal, David, I think you're absolutely spot on. First of all, Goldson had a very poor game. I think he lost the ball 13 times, 7 of which were in his own half, which kind of shows you how poor he was in possession, but also how high up Celtic were pressing. But for that goal, it actually starts with McGregor put the ball out to Katic. He tries to bring it forward. He kind of turns back, changes his mind because, as you said, there is no passing options. Kamara has come into the left back area for some reason, and he again gets the ball, goes back to McGregor, and then it comes out to Goldson, who tries to bring it forward. Jack sits in. Davis is in a poor position. Tav has got 2 men on him as usual. He doesn't really know what to do. He plays a stupid pass to nowhere. I'm not really sure what he's doing with it, but I kind of need to stick up for him. There's just no one there. We've seen it with Worrell. Worrell got all that stick, and yes, he made a mistake against Kilmarnock, but it was the same situation again. There is zero passing option. If they're not going to lump it long, there's not much else they can do. I think in this situation, Goldson should have lumped it long. I think I've seen Arfield berating him just as they were going back to take kick-off. They should have played the ball over to him. It's a very ambitious ball to lump it over Celtic. I did feel a little bit for him. When Johnston gets the ball, he takes it on. Jack has dropped back into next to Katic to kind of support. He gets caught in 2 minds. I think Mikey Johnston plays the ball very early, so Jack's just about trying to come out and close him down. Plays the ball. Katic, I think, is trying to play offside and go for Edouard at the same time. Gets caught doing nothing. Ends up just playing him onside, and it's a decent finish. But I completely agree, David. Goldson has looked shaky, but he seems to be undroppable as far as a manager goes. You can class him in the same category as Tav, Jack, Davis, Arfield, Morelos up until yesterday, I thought. So they're these kind of go-to guys. I would be up for, if it's not Helander coming in to partner Katic, I'd be up for Edmondson getting a run for a couple of games, because I think he needs a rest. But he seems like one of these players that will want to keep playing through it, like he did last season. But I think at some point somebody's going to have to take him aside and say, I think you just need a wee break, big man.
Adam's touched on something there that is a regular feature of our poorer performances, and I don't want to see us lapse into it because we did a lot last season, and that's that a lot of the time in games where we're not playing really well, Hoggy, and we have won a couple of matches this season where we've not played well, which is great because last season we had to play well to win a match, and you're not going to get anywhere like that because it's unrealistic to expect a team to play brilliantly every week. But when the team are having these off days, the midfielders do seem to just drop deeper and deeper and deeper and become really, really static. And suddenly you're left when Rangers quite often can have maybe as many as 6 players in our own half, then a huge gap and 4 or 5 players in the edge of the opposition box. And teams just fill that space and completely block it off. We've got to find a player, or the management has got to get with these guys who are regularly playing into their heads that on days like this, that can't happen. And we see it time after time. And we've got away with it a couple of times this season against St Mirren, against Kilmarnock. We didn't get away with it yesterday.
No, we didn't. And I think it's often their kind of, our midfield's almost comfort blanket is their go-to place. If things aren't working, I'll drop deep because I can make it work. I genuinely believe that's the case, because you've seen, take out against the likes of East Fife or St Mirren, you were finding Joe Aribo almost coming back to try and be the quarterback. Ryan Jack's got a tendency to go and do that. Stephen Davis wants to do that all the time as well. One of them needs to take responsibility. For me, it's Stephen Davis. I'm a massive Stephen Davis fan, but he's an elder statesman in there.
I think he tried to in the second half. He didn't play well, but I think he did at least try in the second half to do that, to drive forward.
Yeah, well, not just drive forward, but also tell people their jobs and their roles. Stephen Davis has been a captain in the past. I'm sure he'll captain Rangers again. And for me, that's part of that role. If you're that deeper line player that's trying to dictate the play, push the other ones in front of you up, even just 5-10 yards. Tell them to get into the right spaces. Tell them where to go. Talk them through the game. You'll see experienced centre-halves do that. In fact, to touch on Connor Golson, I actually think Nico Katic has been talking Connor Golson through games recently. That's how well Katic has been playing. For me in the midfield, that's got to be Stephen Davis's role. He is the senior statesman in there, or the elder statesman. He needs to be getting them pushed up. He needs to be getting them into the right positions. He needs to be talking kids like Joe Aribo through the game, because I think we sometimes do this. We've got an absolute burning desire, a demand, a want to win silverware. We have to have it. Joe Aribo is a fantastic football player, but he's come from Charlton and he's still a kid. So, we cannot and we should not expect the second coming, David. And sometimes with him, and I'm guilty of this as well, because you see what a talented player he is. When he's getting brushed off the ball and his head drops a little bit, that's where the senior statesmen in that side need to be talking him through it. Your Scott Arfields, your Stephen Davises, your, although he was a million miles away from him, your Tavs, even your John Flanagans, guys who have been there, seen it and done it at varying levels, and some of them taking some tankings in the past few years with us from the other side. So I genuinely didn't see that yesterday, and that actually really disappointed me from Stephen Davis.
Celtic, of course, got a second goal in injury time from, I don't know the guy's name, the one that looks like Deadpool Scrotum. He got the goal, and Celtic, 2-0. Don't think it was a 2-0 game. Doesn't matter. A defeat's a defeat. But there was only time then for a cameo from Jordan Jones when he ran, smashed into a bad tackle. No attempt to play the ball, just was looking to foul the guy. Ends up hurting himself. That's not what you're supposed to do, Jordan. It's supposed to be the other way round. And got injured, and now is a 3-game ban, Adam. Not great.
No, not at all. I guess it was a bit of frustration, and the manager mentioned after it he's probably trying to appease the crowd, but that's not the right way to go about it. It was very cynical. I would question, going back to the first 10 minutes or so, how much more cynical it is than Callum McGregor's tackle on Scott Arfield, I think it was.
It's an excellent point, because that tackle is, I'm not going to get booked for this at this stage. And listen, I don't think it was a red card, the McGregor tackle. I'll hold my hands up. People may disagree. I think it was a stonewall yellow. But he did it knowing that the ref wasn't going to give him a booking at that stage. And that's piss poor officiating.
As he was very lenient, and I think you're right. They're both yellows for me. I get the Jones one is maybe a little bit higher, and he's went out to do him, so maybe the intent factor comes into it. But there was more than a few challenges early doors that could and should have been bookings. I don't really think you can get away with doing what Madden did and being that lenient in Old Firm games. I mean, I'm all for letting games flow, but some of them were shockers. And if they weren't, they were either third or fourth kind of petty tackles. First yellow card was for Arfield in the 89th minute. Has that ever happened before? I can't think of it. And it played right into Celtic's hands, to be fair, as they're quite happy. They were quite happy time wasting and breaking up play once they got that goal.
We shouldn't chuck the baby out with the bathwater, Hoggy. It's the first setback of what so far has been a very good season. We've ticked every box. We've hit every target that we've been after. And we do need to remember that the low of yesterday came just 3 days after the enormous high of a very good victory over a good side. Legia are a good side. They had a good defence. They knew what they were doing on a wild night at Ibrox that was unforgettable.
Yeah, and Thursday was brilliant. But it's the West of Scotland, David. You're only as good as your last game, especially when you've been starved of success like we have. I said earlier, we're desperate for it. So therefore, we're going to almost get a kind of magnified response to the great and to the bad. And we got that on Thursday, and we got that yesterday. See, in the cold light of day, it's the first Old Firm game. We wanted to go into that Old Firm game with maximum points. We did. We did that grinding out 2 hard-fought results at Kilmarnock and St Mirren, something we hadn't seen last year. So we had maximum points. I think the manager had a shocker. The team had a shocker. We were beaten 2-0. We didn't deserve anything out of the game, frankly, right? But it's the first Old Firm game. There's 3 to go. And I don't care what league season it is. The league's not won by the first Old Firm game, David. And therefore, absolutely, yesterday I was quite animated and angry, as you know. But cold light of day, 24 hours later, I think that there's a time and place for what I'd call hysterical fanny holding. Today's not it, because we're 3 points behind. Now, this time last year, Christ, how many points were we behind? What, 6 or 7 by this point? And
7.
7. So, and we were piss poor. The manager and the team, piss poor. We've talked about it. 2 players turned up, the rest didn't. The manager didn't turn up. The coaching staff didn't turn up. And for me, Celtic played probably as well as we're going to see Celtic play against us. And therefore, it's now about how we react. Last season we would react to disappointment in a bad way and play within ourselves. I expect us to go out and take Livingston to bits at Ibrox in the next game, win 4 or 5-0, and it starts to get us back on track, and we start to build that momentum again. So that's probably my optimistic chip in my head kicking in, and that doesn't often happen. But we've seen it this season already. When the chips are down, we've ground it out. And therefore, I genuinely can't see us turning in a performance like that again, and certainly not saying the next Old Firm game, because if we do, then that's a pattern, and that would be curtains.
The next few months, Adam, the challenge is something that we didn't do enough last season, which was win the games against the rest of the league. And now we don't play Celtic again until after Christmas. We've got a huge run of fixtures coming up now. The Europa League, some excellent but big matches against tough teams are going to be coming here. Again, to bang on about this squad thing, we heard a lot in the summer about we're bringing in these guys to give us options for these games. If we're going to have to see people start to establish themselves, and it may be that you're the league game player and you're the Euro night specialist or whatever, but we have a big squad. It's got to be used. There's no point getting to the end of the season and somebody's played 70 games and somebody else has played 3. That seems pointless.
No, we do. We absolutely do, and I think we need to start seeing guys like Andy King and Brandon Barker, and even Jamie Murphy if he's staying getting some minutes now in various types of games. You're right. It's a relatively, I don't want to say easy, but there's no mega big fixtures until Hearts, Aberdeen at home, I think we've got, and then we've maybe got Hearts away at the end of October. But there's nothing earth-shattering other than that in the next 5 or 6. So I think we could do with being on a wee bit of a run. Obviously, Hastie's went out on loan today. Barker and Jones are injured / suspended. Ojo's got a bit of a knock, so we are a wee bit light, I guess. We've got half bit Arfield, Greg Stewart and Jamie Murphy really on the wings, depending on how bad Ojo's knocks, etc. are. So I think we need someone else in. I'm sure we're going to come on to it, but I think we definitely need someone else in there as well. Never mind some of them getting minutes.
Well, beautifully set up there, Adam. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
That was a lovely segue. And that is, of course, the news. Rangers are, as we record Monday evening, Rangers are close to a deal, a permanent deal for Ryan Kent. He would be returning for £7 million from Liverpool on a 4-year contract if, and we do stress as we record, if the deal is done. Which, of course, means that by the time a lot of you listen to this next section will either be incredibly valid or very redundant. But what can we do? We are but slaves to the Rangers social media team announcing things. Hoggy, Firstly, it's a player Steven Gerrard obviously covets. It's a player who's very popular with the majority of the support, but there have been some people questioning, is he worth £7 million? Is he worth £7 million to us? And could that money have been spent better elsewhere?
First things first, David. For all our Celtic supporting listeners, just exactly where are we getting the money from? You will never know. EBTs are back. Is he worth £7 million? So I think the Ryan Kent that we saw last season, certainly in the second half of the season, grew in to be a terrific football player for us. I genuinely think if £7 million's the going rate and we know what he can do for us, I think that's a real key. Sometimes you get transfer deadline day deals and you get a little bit excited and then the player takes umpteen months to get into the side. Think Jermaine Defoe, for example. Jermaine Defoe and Stephen Davis, we brought them in straight away at Rugby Park and it bombed badly. We know exactly what Ryan Kent's going to be able to do. We know he's fit. And therefore, if he can replicate what he did in the second half of the season for us over the next 2.5 years, then we'll sell him at a huge profit, David. And therefore, that's that risk and reward thing. That are we happy to continually get free transfers or low-cost signings and 1 in 5 work? Or are we happy to push the boat out, knowing fine well that there's a fair to middling chance that he's going to be able to hit the ground running and then sell him back to England in the next 2.5 years? That's, I think, as long as the finances are right and the deal's structured right for Rangers, then I think it's a terrific signing. I really do. Do I think he's worth £7 million? I think in the long run, he's worth £7 million, yes.
I think that it's important to clarify that it's not maybe quite as straightforward or quite as binary as people sometimes believe, Adam, in terms of a transfer fee like this. That firstly, we're buying him for £7 million doesn't mean we're giving Liverpool £7 million tomorrow. Secondly, well, you could have spent that on a different player. Again, it doesn't quite work like that. Ryan Kent's wage demands will be considerably less than, say, someone like Fabian Delph, who went for £8 million. And you would think, well, just put an extra million in that. You're maybe looking at a 4-year contract that's worth an extra genuine, £4 or £5 million than you are on Ryan Kent. So again, it's not quite as straightforward as that. And lastly, or you could buy 2 players for that. Again, are the 2 wages combined more than that? Are the 2 initial payments you need to put out more than Rangers have currently? There are a lot of factors that go into play before you make a decision like this.
There is, and you can also flip it around and say, would you rather buy Ryan Kent or Grezda and 2 Mexicans? And I think that's perfectly valid. I agree with Hoggy. I think he will be value at that amount of money. We don't know what the structure is, if it's after European appearances, international appearances even, or if it's just straight instalments, sell-on fees, etc. We don't know the ins and outs of the deal. For me, at the stage where I don't really, not that I don't care about the money, but the transfer fee is kind of irrelevant. I think Kent is the lowest punt in terms of a player coming in that can hit the ground running in the team. If the fee is over what we normally pay, then okay, I'm not on the finance side of it, to be honest. I am on the playing side in terms of he, for me, fills a gap that we need. We need someone in there who has experience of playing in this team for this manager against these players. And he showed on more than one occasion last year that he's a big game player. I get people's concerns about maybe his inconsistencies. Maybe the start of last season, he was injured for a little bit and then he came back and he kind of was okay for bits and pieces. But the last 4 or 5 months of the season, I thought he was one of our main creative players, certainly behind Morelos and Tav, and for me it's a no-brainer on the football side of it.
I think that one of the arguments put forward by people who aren't keen on the deal is he's not going to win the league on his own. No, he's not. Nobody is. So let's just cut that argument straight away. There is no silver bullet unless Lionel Messi feels that he's got this huge gap on his CV that he needs to atone for. The market we're in, there isn't the one player who's going to come along and do it. It's all about building. Some parts are more expensive, more important than others, and hopefully Ryan Kent, if he signs, would be one of those. The other thing, though, is this, well, you know, we had him last season and we lost games. We'll lose games with him now. You know, that's what's going to happen. But he is getting better. And 1, he has no fear of a challenge. 2, he's a big game player. 3, we know he turns up in Old Firm matches, which are important. And all of these factors are risks, as Adam and Hoggy have explained, that you don't know when you sign a player from... when you sign a player, full stop. So you're minimising the risk to that. I think that what we've seen over the last week is that there is definitely a certain type of Rangers supporter who, for want of a better word, is comforted by misery. And you see it because the type you don't hear from them on Friday morning, but you never hear the fucking end of them on Monday morning, you know? And it's everything's an negative. And I suppose the defence would be that after the last 10 years, who can blame them? But Hoggy, you and I are kind of older soldiers, and fuck, we had these guys when Walter was winning things. we had these guys when Advocat was there. So I just think that there is a mentality, and I'm sure those same people would turn around and tell me that I'm a happy clapper and I'm always, you know, looking for positivity and maybe I am, but I just don't quite understand this constant looking for things to say that's shite, we'll fail, don't know why we're doing that, waste of time. I don't get what it brings to the party.
Welcome to Scottish football mentality, David. I don't think it's a Rangers thing. I really don't. I think it's a Scottish mentality thing. That we're only happy when things are shite. Because then we can moan about it, and we love a right good moan. So I think when you magnify that by the last 10 years or last 9 years or whatever, with exactly where we've been, David, then you get this. We're starting to get closer, and therefore folk want it now. We want it now, we want it signed and sealed, and we want it guaranteed. Listen, there's no guarantees. There simply isn't guarantees. Football doesn't work like that unless you're Manchester City. And even then, Leicester City won a bloody league. Mm-hmm. So this is the game that we all follow. And sometimes it feels quite... it's almost as if we're putting ourselves through unnecessary stress and torture and into an early grave. But that's the game that we all love, and you're right, some go after it from a happy clappy mentality of always look in the positives. Some always look on the negatives. Doesn't matter what we do, tomorrow's still going to be shite and Ryan Kent won't win us the league on his own. And you're right, of course he's not. That's why we've got a bloody squad. I like to think I'm probably somewhere in the middle, maybe veering to the negative side usually, but listen, Ryan Kent will improve our squad. I think that's only an opinion, but it can almost be taken as fact. Ryan Kent, in my opinion, will significantly improve our starting 11. And therefore, that gives us a better chance of winning the league and a better chance of doing well in Europe and maybe even progressing out the group stages. Maybe. But the flip side is, maybe it won't. But if we're only dealing in if we don't want to deal in maybes with football, David, then that's probably the time that we want to just pack up and chuck it, because football is a game of maybes. It really is. So therefore, us signing Ryan Kent, you've got to look at it as a positive, surely, because look at the game that we played yesterday. Is anyone trying to tell me for a single second that Ryan Kent wouldn't have improved us yesterday?
And I think that it's also good news for people in Glasgow, Adam, who sell snapback hats and NFL merch.
Absolutely. I think Colin will be getting into that soon for us, so it should be an absolute goldmine. I think you're right, 100%. That's another benefit of it.
Yeah, I don't think I could carry that off, quite frankly. I think I might look like Vanilla Ice, as he is now. rather than
that. I go back and look at that Ryan Kent Instagram picture of him in the Louvre, and it just slays me.
Yeah, it's
So
brilliant.
if we can get anything like that on the go, I think people will buy it, to be honest.
I think that that's a series I'd like to do on Patreon. For those of you who haven't signed up yet, why not get to Heart and Hand on Patreon? It's brilliant. You'll love it. Patreon.com/Heart and Hand, just $1.99 per month. But I think that we should take Scottish football figures to fantastic historical or cultural sites and get their take on it. So, for instance, you could take Jim Leishman, right, to the Tate Modern and get his views on Tracy Emin's shitted bed with a knickers in it thing. There's room here. We need to think laterally. Speaking then, just before we go, of the European draw, obviously, Hoggy, it's been a hell of a ride, not just on the pitch but off it as well. The other night with 3,000 seats closed, that will happen again against in our first match at home against, I think it's against Feyenoord.
Feyenoord,
yeah. So it's an interesting draw Rangers have, and I think that there's just something great and glamorous and colourful about European matches. It's where our club should be.
It is, and so I'm going to say something here, David, again, might upset some. I think Rangers, with where we are right now, we're a Europa League team. We're not a Champions League team, neither are Celtic, frankly. And that's where...
Well, obviously, I mean...
absolutely.
I'm not even a last qualifying round Champions League team.
Indeed, you kind of need to get past Cluj. And that should be funny when they play them again in the Europa League. So, at the minute, we're a Europa League side. And therefore, sometimes you can draw teams that you've never heard of, like Osijek, for example. Skupje, I had never heard of them in my life before. And I like to think of myself, David, as a fairly knowledgeable football person. That just shows that's a lot of shite. The draw that we've got is a kind of Champions League-esque draw. Feyenoord, Dutch League winners a couple of years ago. Porto, we played them in the Champions League. Young Boys of Bern have been in and out of the Champions League. It's a tough draw. But let's face it, who doesn't want those Champions League-like nights at Ibrox? That first one against Feyenoord, I think, will be superb. Then we've got 2 away games, Young Boys of Bern and Porto. If we can have 4 points from those 3 games, then that probably makes it game on for me.
And I suppose, Adam, the thing for me is I agree with Hoggy. I think it's a good draw. There's some amazing fixtures. But there was a bit of me that was on the one hand relieved and on the other hand sad that we didn't draw Roma or Lazio. And the reason for that is we're both, Adam and I, Serie A fanboys. We do a Serie A show on Patreon. And I'd have loved to have seen that. Against that, I know they'd have had to shut us down the day after. And look, there's no argument. If we'd been to Rome, because we'd all have gone, we'd had to. It's the last time we'd get to see Rangers. And I think even as we were kind of coming back in, at Glasgow Airport, and they were saying, they're going to shut you down. We're like, we know, we accept it. But what a fucking way it would have been to go out.
I think Jimmy Bell would have turned off the lights at Ibrox on the way out rather than on the way back. I think he'd have, right, we'll see you later, that's us. I agree with you. I think it would have been great. Obviously, Man U, Arsenal, Lazio, Roma were the big 4, I think, in the group, or in the draw, sorry. I would have liked one of them, if I'm being honest. However, the group we've got, as Hoggy said, it's pretty much Champions League level. Porto are a very big name still, as are Feyenoord. It's one of those fine mixes of decent ties, but also it is pretty much not out with the realms of possibility that we could go through as well. So it's kind of perfect from that sense.
Okay, folks, that will do us this week on Heart and Hand. We will be back as soon as the football starts up in a couple of weeks with the first Heart and Hand extra of the season to preview the Livingston game. Just time to thank our executive producers in London, Mike Lee and Paul Myers, and to thank my 2 guests today. First of all, Ian Hogg.
Pleasure, mate. Thanks.
Adam Thornton.
Cheers, David.
And I'll be back to talk to you again in a couple of weeks. Until then, have a good one. Bye.